All right, hello everybody. So I figured I was going to have to end up creating two videos instead of just one because I realized I was going to have to switch out my PowerPoints, so it was easier just to make two videos. So here we are back again. So in the previous video, I was talking to you about the importance of establishing the basis of comparison, which means two or more things have to have enough commonalities, enough ways in which they're similar in order for that comparison to be valid. So even though in the essay you will be thinking about differences, and probably I would say 80% of your essay will probably be focused on those differences, but still we have to start with how two or more things are alike. So that's what we mean by having that valid basis of comparison. So I thought we might look at an example of something that's not a valid basis of comparison, which is comparing a horse to a fly. It's one of my favorite examples to talk about when I come to this section of comparison and contrast. Because even though in theory, yes, they're both two types of animals, I guess you could argue, but their differences are so vast that it begs the huge question of why would you even bother? How much mileage could you really get out of that comparison? Other than some very lame points, uh, the fact that maybe they both have legs or they both have eyes, but who cares, right? Nobody. Your comparison has got to make sense. So if you take a large mammal like a horse, you're going to have to compare a horse to other classifications of animals that are in the same ballpark as a horse. Um, what might that be? Well, a mule, a cow, a zebra. That would make a lot of sense. Heck, even a dog or a cat would make more sense than trying to compare a horse to a fly. Now, if we take the fly, you might say, okay, you could compare a fly to what might make sense. A bee, perhaps, a wasp, perhaps, even a butterfly. That might work because they're in the same classification. There has to be enough similarities to make that valid. All right, let's see. I'm trying to advance to my next slide here. So the next few slides, we're going to think about if we were comparing singers, which is a topic that you might consider for your comparison and contrast. Now, I'm old, okay, so I'm going back to examples from my generation, but hopefully they're still relevant for you. I think most of us still know who these people are. But if we think about a battle of the divas, a good one might be Whitney Houston versus Janet Jackson. And again, because that basis of comparison is going to be very, very strong. It's strong for a number of reasons. The fact that they are both female singers, we'll start there. The fact that they are both female African American singers, okay, we can go there. The fact that they are about the same age, they were same generation, same time period, that increases the validity of that basis of comparison because they were both popular in the 80s and 90s. What else? Their genre of music is the same. Roughly R&B, pop, dance-oriented music. That's what they're both known for. Now, of course, one is deceased and one is still with us, but other than that, we got a really strong basis of comparison there. But if we start to switch the singers out, notice that basis of comparison is going to start to get a little bit wider. Now, if we replace Whitney Houston with Madonna, it's still it's still a valid basis of comparison, and you could definitely still get a strong essay by comparing those two. But there are some differences now, right? They're still from the same time period. They're still both female, still, I guess you could argue, same genre of music, but now one's white, one's black. That automatically has widened the gap a little bit. You could still compare them, but the wider that gap gets, the more challenging it gets. So what happens if we replace Madonna with Nicki Minaj? Well, we still got two female singers. We still got two female African American singers, so we got that. But now they're from two different time periods. There are two different genres of music. Okay, so now we've got a rapper versus a singer. So that would widen that gap quite a bit. And then look what happens here. So if we replace Nicki now with Billie Holiday, and we're going to compare Janet and Billie Holiday, granted, it could still be done, but you would be focusing far more on how they're different than how they're similar. Now, if you wanted to start with the fact that they're two female African American singers, I guess that's okay. You could do that. But your basis of comparison, which is your foundation of the entire essay, is going to be a little bit weaker now. They're from two totally different time periods. Billie Holiday was a jazz singer from the 1930s, so two totally different styles of music, two totally different generations, very, very little that they would actually have in common. So again, what started with a very strong basis of comparison when we had Janet and Whitney by degrees, we have gradually widened that gap. Now, what you want to think about in your essay is how you can close that gap as much as possible while still focusing on the differences between the two things. So let me give you, this is a fun little exercise that I like to do with this unit. Let's think about the two GOATs, greatest of all time, both with the initials MJ, but one is a basketball player and one is a singer. What would be their basis of comparison, and then what would be their points of difference? There's a video, which I'm not going to in the folder, so you'll be able to watch that video on your own time. That video is that these two have a sort of a competition face-off where one MJ is going to teach the other MJ how to do what he does best. So that means Michael Jordan, who's really great at basketball, is going to try to teach MJ, Michael Jackson, how to shoot basketball. And Michael Jackson, the singer and dancer, is going to try to teach Michael Jordan how to dance, with some mixed results. And it's a pretty funny video. So I really highly encourage you to click that link in the folder and watch that. There's going to be a discussion assignment afterwards that's going to ask you some questions about that video. But here are some things that you can consider for your discussion. So one thing that you'll see as a result of that video is they were both great at what they do, but when they tried to do what the other does best, they kind of sucked. Okay. So we might think about why that is. what made one a superior athlete versus what made the other a superior dancer, and so for these bullet points right here, I thought about their physiques, the way they were built, because Michael Jordan to me just looked very clumsy trying to moonwalk. But, obviously Michael Jackson did not have the build for a basketball player there. So that was something that I thought of in comparing and contrasting the two of them. But you might come up with some stuff of your own. So I would like for you to look at that video and then come back and do that discussion assignment. So that discussion assignment is going to ask you first some questions about that video, and then you can come up with a couple of things of your own and just kind of hash out what are their similarities, or why are these two things often compared. So again, if you think about rivalries, that's usually a really good place to start, because anytime we get into those kinds of debates about this, X is better than Y, there's usually a good reason for that, and it comes back to the fact that these are two things often compared to each other, which means they have to have some similarities, even though they might have a lot of differences. All right. So happy working on your assignment. I hope you enjoy the videos, and I will look forward to perhaps seeing some of the discussions that you come up with. Bye-bye.